What if you could create a listening culture that elevates the employee experience inside your organization? In my new Cycle Listening Action Planning Guide, I uncover how you can ensure those you lead feel heard by taking 3 key approaches to listening at work. Get the free guide at heatheryounger.com today. Hello, everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership at Heart podcast. And today I have as my guest, Dan Gray. And I was sharing with him just before that for those who listen now, you've been seeing that I've been accepting quite a bit of people that have been just coming to me, not from you all who are listening, who are supposed to be referring people to me, but from other people on the outside. And someone had originally sent him my way. And I'm like, I'm not sure. And then all of a sudden they said, wait a second, here's everything that Dan's doing. I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, he's got to be on my show. Like, he sounds amazing. And all the work that the organization that he works for sounds amazing. So absolutely, yes. So just the breadth and your focus on others focused, outward focus, community focus is the reason why I have you on, Dan. Welcome.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate the thorough vetting process, and I'm glad I made it through in the end.
So where are you anyway right now in your leadership journey?
It's a great question. So I think for me, it's really just the beginning. I try and approach everything with a learning mindset. And leadership in particular is one that I don't think you can ever be finished. I really try and look at every relationship that I have, whether it's a colleague or a direct report, and try and view it through the lens of how could I have done that better? How can I make sure that the mistakes I made here don't happen again? And to be honest, I'm making mistakes all the time. I think that's totally natural. So whether something has a successful or an unsuccessful outcome, reflection is really the only way to get better. So I'd say still very, very early in that journey for sure.
I always appreciate when people are like, I'm not perfect. I haven't arrived yet. So like, yeah, where am I in my journey? I am still on the journey. It's not done. So I totally get that. So tell me from a day-to-day perspective, what is the business that you're in and what's your business?
For sure. So I work for a company called Kotn. It's spelled Kotn. So the pronunciation doesn't always get done perfectly. But so Kotn started as a consumer business. We have a consumer apparel and home business where we sell ethical and sustainable products to consumers. We're based out of Toronto, but our supply chain's in Egypt. And really the core of the business is really centered around the idea of taking things from farm to hanger. So our business started when our CEO naively went to Egypt with the mission of starting a t-shirt company, thinking that, it was something that you could just do from scratch. And he started working with farmers directly. And what we ended up with was a supply chain where we know every single stakeholder within our supply chain. So we're one of 5% of the apparel industry that can lay claim to being 100% traceable. And after we took a step back and realized what we built from a supply chain standpoint, we started a second business called Kotn Supply. And that business is geared towards taking those ethical products and customizing them, working with teams, employers, influencers, communities to help them make customized apparel in order to have a deeper connection with the people ultimately wearing them. So my role, I'm general manager of our wholesale business. We're very fortunate that, again, we do get to operate within the same ethical and sustainable supply chain, and we help amazing communities create awesome products that ultimately show off the best version of their brand and allow them to create deeper, more tangible connections with those who ultimately wear that clothing.
Why Egypt? I'm super curious on that.
Yeah, so, Egypt used to have this incredible lineage. I believe back in the 70s and 80s, Egyptian cotton was the thing. It was the material. It had such a high standard. And over time, that quality, or at least that brand story for the material itself, has sort of deteriorated. And so, our CEO, Rami, he has roots in family based in Egypt. So it was a natural fit. Here's this amazing fiber. Here's a chance to reinvigorate a place that has such amazing textile and apparel roots. And so it was a natural fit for our business. And, we're fortunate to have such an amazing tie to that country. We have a team there that spends 100% of their time working with farmers and ensuring production there continues to follow that ethical and sustainable supply chain. And, the communities that we operate in, we want to make sure that this is not a short-term thing. There's too many stories about people manufacturing, not just in apparel, but in all manufacturing industries, taking such a a short-term mindset, and we really don't want that to be the case. This is a community that we're invested in for the long haul.
Earlier, before we started recording, you were talking about the 10 schools in Egypt, because I want to bring that out too. So when you talk about kind of investing back in the community in which you're doing business and all that, I'd like to share with the people who are listening more about how you extend your reach and the sustainability concept and helping the community around you, even in Egypt.
Yeah, for sure. So, as part of working with the farmers in Egypt and building that community infrastructure, if we want to have true sustainability and a long-lasting partnership with that country, part of the thing with that we need to invest in is the future. And so one way we've been able to do that is on Black Friday and throughout the holiday season, we do ensure that 100% of proceeds from our Black Friday promotion go towards building schools in Egypt. And we also donate a percentage of proceeds to building those schools year round as well. And to date, I think we've been running that promotion for 4 or 5 years now. We've been able to build and maintain 10 schools in Egypt in order to help improve the literacy rate there and ensure that, we're also helping the next generation, even though, they're not directly working with us. And, we probably have an indirect relationship with them to date. Those schools go a long way in terms of making sure that we're deeply rooted in the community and we're giving back as well.
I love that. And I'm assuming that connection with the founder to the community there is a big one. Like he probably saw a need in the schools and thought, well, we're doing pretty well. Let's kind of help out.
For sure. I can't speak for him, but having heard the stories from him and our other founders and the rest of the team that's had the chance to visit them, it's hard not to feel great about the work we're doing and want to continue investing there. When you see these kids that greet the team with open arms and are so happy to have that opportunity, it feels wonderful for us to be able to do that. And I think one of the cool things too is we're offering that opportunity to give back to our customers as well. They're just shopping like they would anywhere else, and we're just providing an additional advantage to using their dollars to go towards a really awesome cause and something that has staying power.
So as the GM, then I'm assuming all of the infrastructure all reports up to you. So like the running of this operation day to day is you kind of doing that. Is that right? Is that a good assumption?
I oversee our wholesale business. So my responsibility as general manager is ensuring that we're finding the most like-minded teams to ultimately produce customized apparel. I'm fortunate that I get to work with pretty much the majority of our business, whether it is our production team in Egypt to produce really high quality apparel or our supply chain team. It affords me the opportunity to work with some really awesome people, both indirectly and directly.
That's awesome. So then in that case, what would the people who report up to you through the wholesale area, what would they say about your leadership style?
It's an interesting question. So this is the kind of introspection that I think it takes to be an effective leader. For me, I think I give people the space to explore and challenge themselves. What I like to do is I am very hands-on when the opportunity affords it. I think that's just my curious nature. I am a persistent tinkerer. But once I feel like someone has earned the right to have space, I like to create sort of a playground for them to be successful. Because the way I approach relationships with my direct reports is ultimately I'm trying to set them up for their next job. Because I know in this modern employee-employer relationship, these are finite relationships. People do tend to jump jobs more than ever. People do go work at different places. Some people only have multiple year tenures at organizations. And I'm aware of that. So what I try and do is essentially be honest with my team and say, hey, I know you're going to leave us one day. What opportunities can I afford you that ultimately allow you to hit the milestones necessary to get your dream job next? Whether that is at Kotn, hopefully we can find that next role for you that enables you to grow. But if not, I want you to have those milestones and resume points that enable you to go wherever you want within your career.
You said a couple of things that were interesting. One of them being once they've earned the right to kind of basically have more space. That's one I want to talk about. And then this, of course, this last one of just like helping them move on to their next place and putting that effort. I mean, most managers of people would never want to take the time to be, to say like, I already know you're moving on. So what can we do to make sure that like you can move on to your next place and it's like all set up for you? Like who does that really as you think about that? And then and again, the first one. So I'd like to talk to that idea of like, what made you have that mindset? Have you just always had that mindset? Are you someone who early on moved on a lot? Just where'd that philosophy come at from?
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of startups, and I think the nature of startups is risk. And so you're not only sort of accumulating risk within wherever you are, it's also risk with your career, right? You're aligning your success to a really early stage company. And so there is going to be a high degree of variability there. So I think it's just being comfortable with the fact that things might not work out perfectly. And if things continue to go a direction that don't align with where you want to go in the future, that's okay. That's not a bad thing. I think the fact that some of the balance of power in the job market has shifted towards employees, that's amazing. People should have that degree of freedom. They should have the ability to go and find a job that's right for them. And if they're in a relationship with a company or a manager that's not working, they should be afforded that ability to go and find a job that's better for them. So with that in mind, I think it's natural for me to have the dialogue with my employees about what the future looks like. I don't want them to feel like they're stuck at Kotn, because that being stuck in place, that complacency, I've had that in jobs. I'm sure you've been there. I've talked to people who've been there. It's a very debilitating feeling, and I never want my team to have that. And so if we can talk about the future in a way that's open-ended, exciting, it's promising. And again, I'm never doing this sort of to the disservice of the organization I'm working at. I'm not saying, hey, go take a job tomorrow. The end goal is, how do we grow you as an individual? The outcome is undefined today. Like, we don't know what the outcome of you growing as a person looks like. That could be taking on a new role or getting a promotion at Kotn, and it could be going elsewhere and taking a promotion. But the path to getting to that positive outcome for that person, that's the exact same, right? That's growing. That's enabling their growth and providing the support for them to get there. I'm invested in that process, and whatever happens afterward, I know it's out of my hands. So I try and allow them to sort of realize wherever they want to go.
It's interesting. As you say that, I think of the book is called The Alliance. Hoffman, the person who was one of the founders of LinkedIn, he and a couple other folks wrote that book called The Alliance. And that, as you're talking, it reminds me of what they did, which is this idea of having like almost like tours of duty is what they refer to it as. Yeah. And so when the person first starts, they might say, okay, well, basically, how long is this tour? And they would say, let's say the person say, oh, I plan on staying for a year or two. And what he would say is the conversation would be like, basically every 3 months, you have the conversation. Okay, is that tour? Can I still rely on you for the tour to be the 2 years? Or has that changed? And okay, what's your next step? So it's really, it's interesting. It's a totally different way of looking at the employer-employee relationship. Very creative, but I like it, because I do think we have to meet people where they are at. And given the current market, I think it's a smart path to go. So, okay. And then the other point that you had, I like how you refer to that, because while I might not use those exact words in the end, like in order for someone to be empowered, someone has to be comfortable enough empowering them. And so then the question is, what is that they have to have? And so in most cases, it has to be a trust that it was, I guess, like you say, earned, like shown, proven, seen. There might be certain people who might empower too precipitatively, really, just like too early, and not actually have any proof of concept that the person can do it. And so it's, I always say, like, starting with baby steps. So like putting them on a small little thing that they can kind of show themselves. And then after they've done that, you can make the thing a little bigger and a little bigger. So it's that same concept, the way you said it. I like the way you said it. So has that ever proven out? Do you have any specific stories on that?
Stories, I'd have to sort of explore that a little bit more. But I think in general, like the broad theme is, how do you let people be successful early on? Because I think the hardest part about starting a new job is proof points in success stories early. Where I've seen people succeed the most is when someone enters an organization and they can get a win under their belt in the first 3 months. And that's very hard to do if you just kind of leave someone alone and say, hey, go and do your job. Because the context that you have to gain in order to be successful when joining an organization, it's a steep learning curve. And so when I say creating space or sort of earning that freedom, it's twofold. It's for me to be comfortable giving that space and putting faith in them, but it's also for the individual not to be thrown off the deep end and feel comfortable enough and have the confidence in themselves and the job that they've been tasked to do to go out and be successful there. So in terms of specific examples, I'd say, I've experienced that as an employee. I've come into organizations where I have been given too much space, and it's been difficult to find proof points or wins early on, and so it's easy for that anxiety to build and to ask yourself, am I doing a good job, right? Like if you think about the amount of emotion and sort of the tension that rises when you first join a job, trying to figure out, am I being successful? It's a very natural thing for people. So I've experienced that. It's a dialogue I try to create with individuals as well. We at Kotn, we do document what the first 30, 60, 90 days should look like for an employee as well, just so that they have sort of yardsticks for where success looks like to measure themselves against, because a lot of people do sort of flounder and look for what success might look like when they're first starting out.
So we obviously can see that you have a lot of emotional intelligence around how to work with employees and just like an openness to be flexible in that regard. Now I want you to share with me a time when maybe you didn't have this more open, enlightened frame of mind and way that you showed up. Is there a specific story you can share with listeners about a time when maybe you don't think you were, the most empowering, or that you didn't lead with heart in a way that you would be more proud of right now to do? And then again, being as specific as you can about the story. And then what did you do to come out of it? What was the change or the trigger for you that helped you become more enlightened?
Yeah. So to the moment I think back to is actually the first time I was formally tasked with becoming a manager. So this would have been maybe 5 or 6 years now. And I was given my first direct report, and I was really excited. Obviously, becoming a manager is a really big career step. So I think selfishly, I was focused on what that meant for myself. And at the same time, after getting that promotion, I was told, congrats on becoming a manager. And oh, by the way, you're about to inherit someone that needs to go on a performance improvement plan tomorrow. And so imagine as a first-time manager, you're sort of you're given an employee who's already kind of been given a death sentence. Now, there's a lot of ways out of a performance improvement plan positively, but I think when you're giving a first-time manager that on their plate, really the outcome is very hard to change. And so I think for me, looking back on that, I wish I'd raised my hand and put my sort of insecurities aside as a manager and said, hey, this is my first time doing this. I need help here. As opposed to, what, I just got given this. I need to go and prove that I can live up to it. Because at the end of the day, we did have to let that individual go. And while that might have been the outcome regardless, I wish I had taken the steps to ensure that I was getting the support I needed in order to approach that relationship as positively as possible and make sure that we exhausted every option. Again, it's possible it would have gone down the same avenue, but as a leader, looking back on that, when I said to you at the beginning, leadership is all about perspective and thinking about those times, I made sure that when I had to make that decision, when we made a decision to ultimately impact someone's career and it will have a lasting effect on them, I wanted to make sure that I took the time to reflect on that and learn from that experience and make sure that the next time I encounter that, I'm a better leader for it. Again, not to say I'm going to get it right the next time, but at least I've respected that person enough to take the time to learn from that relationship and find a way to become a better manager.
That's helpful. It's always helpful to hear, particularly since you haven't been doing this for 20 years. You're still a young leader, and so that it's not so far behind you that you were, had this awakening or this enlightenment. I think we all can kind of look back and kind of say the same things. When could I have been better? What were the cards that I was dealt? How did I handle it? Did I have this? Did I have that? So now it's like, I think the good thing about it is having those, being enlightened now helps you then help your people who are looking to you for guidance in that same way.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't be an effective leader without being reflective of that. And then I see my team members who are leading people now having similar experiences, and having thought about that, having gone through that, I can now provide them a little bit more guidance that I wish I had at the time. So that chain of leadership, it is one that seems to rear its head more than I expected and quicker than I expected. But that perspective is hopefully not only benefited me, but others as well.
So right now we're at the time at the podcast where you're able to actually turn the tables and ask me a question. So knowing the work I do in this space, I do it. I'm assuming you can just ask me whatever. What do you want to ask me? For those who are listening.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think about a lot is it seems like workplace culture generally rewards people that become managers. And I think it can often be a negative incentive because some people just aren't suited for management. Some people chase it because of the way it looks on a resume, but it might not be the right fit for them. So I'm curious your commentary on that as a general theme, and then how you would approach this with someone that might have leadership capability but doesn't want to manage, and how do you ensure that they stay a top performer without sort of stunting their growth in an organization?
Those are good questions. I think if managers or other leaders of other people who have their high potentials aren't diving deep with them to find out what their goals are, like what are their interests. Their interests might not be management, and really asking them what is it that makes them feel like they're doing meaningful work. What is it that gets them up and gets them excited every day? Not shying away from just having more difficult conversations, or asking, kind of like you were saying earlier, Dan, like asking them, when you get to the bottom where you see they're only planning on staying for a little bit, it's like, well, okay, well, what can we do to make sure that we are seeing all of your gifts while you're here, and we are also setting you up for whatever your next steps are. But most people aren't comfortable having that kind of conversation. It's very built into the employer-employee relationship is this really outdated assumption that everybody's going to stay forever. And even in the work I do in employee loyalty, so the whole goal is to say, how can we keep more people staying with us longer? The end goal isn't how do we get people to stay with us forever? It's how can we get them to stay with us longer and be more engaged while they're with us? So even if they're there 2 years and they give us so much and they innovate and they do so many things during that time period, right? Then it's just being open to have that conversation. So I'd say for the leaders who might be leading high potentials, who aren't people who want to be managers as well, it's just incumbent upon us to have those just much deeper conversations that are not surface, be comfortable with hearing kind of the difficult truths, and then figuring out how we help them, like you talked about earlier, finding the path that best suits them. And then again, at the same time, how can we let them shine why they are with us during that time? That's I think those are the kind of the solutions, I guess, for it. After having said that, though, there really is no cookie cutter approach. You just got to go. You got to get to know people, and you have to have good conversations.
Yeah, sometimes it is that easy, right? It's having those conversations, and I think getting to a place where you're comfortable enough to have that back and forth dialogue is half the battle.
Mm-hmm. It really is. So for those people who are listening right now who, they obviously have listened to you, they listened to our conversation, and I'm sure they're writing down some notes and taking some good tips away. But for those who might need a little extra oomph, can you have some pearls of wisdom for them? A couple pearls of wisdom you might leave the listeners with, just related to leadership.
Yeah, I think for me, when I'm having a tough day or I kind of lose perspective when it comes to becoming a leader, I try and look at it from a very and this might seem backwards, but a selfish perspective, because I think humans are inherently selfish people at the end of the day. And so if you're struggling to see or make a connection with your employee, think about the benefit to you of being an effective leader. Think about by showing up and engaging in a relationship, how much that can help your career. I have a very hard time empathizing with leaders that think berating their employees or ultimately putting their needs above others will ultimately lead to a chain reaction that benefits them in the workplace. So if as a leader you're struggling to find the motivation to be a good leader, I would say, like, if you're an effective leader, that checks off all the boxes for you when it comes for time for your performance review. So if there's ever something that's going to have disproportionate value or disproportionate incentives for you, it is showing up for your people and being a great manager, because it creates more leverage for you. It creates experiences that ultimately lead to positive results for you and your team. And then on top of that, I'd say another thing I will add here, just selfishly on behalf of Kotn Supply, is one of the things that we do as a supplier of high quality merchandise for teams and employers, finding perks that you can create a relationship with your employee through, whether it is remote activities, whether it is sessions for driving culture, whether it's leadership training, or in our example, we give your team high quality merchandise so that they can become the biggest ambassadors for your company and ultimately create that deeper relationship with the organization. It's just investing back in them, realizing that these relationships are living organisms that require resources, they require time, they require your attention. There's no shortage of investment that isn't worth putting towards people.
I love that. Investing in your people is so key. And, one little sub point I want to make before we end is, as everybody knows who listens to me, caring leadership and leadership with heart does start with us as leaders, so that we do have to fill ourselves up first. It's not the same thing of what Dan was talking about, though. So this is like, we have to fill our own cups up first. We have to make sure that we're well cared for, so that then we can show up with more care for people. And so that we have to start there in order to, otherwise, if we just let ourselves become an empty, dry cup, we can't show up with zeal and excitement and uplift them in that place. So I talk a lot about that, Dan. So I just wanted to make sure I circle back around that.
For sure.
I know you weren't talking about the counter to that. You were just saying something different, which is that once you were making an assumption that that's taking place. If that's already taking place, now it's time to show up in a bigger, better way, investing in your people, taking that time to focus on them and give them what they need and see where they're at and meet them where they're at in their shoes. That's really the critical thing here. So, yeah.
And I think what's incredible about your audience is the fact that they're tuning in to begin with means they're already doing that, right? I think you're talking to an audience that wants to engage in this. And so it's a different dialogue, and it's a different sort of, it's a different approach, right? If you're willing to seek out someone that is going to help you become a better leader, that's halfway there. You've taken a huge step to be a better leader because you're present, you're engaging in the topic, and you're obviously trying to grow. So I think that's pretty amazing that people show up with that intention.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I love my listeners too. I know that they have an openness to learn new things and sometimes hear things that are not what they're automatically thinking. Okay, I do have to ask one totally off subject.
Sure.
But for those who would watch this on YouTube, where are you specifically, Dan?
Yeah. So we were in a house in Toronto, Canada. So okay. I got the attic office. So I got the vaulted ceilings above me, and I was relegated upstairs. So my booming voice can't take over the rest of the house.
Oh, I love it up there. I was just like going, that's like a cool place and a little window ledge. And I'm like, oh, can I come? I'm going to go there.
Yeah. We got the dog bed. The dog's taking a rest downstairs, but usually he's here with me.
Oh, that's so funny. So for those who can't see, you can see, because all you have to do is just go over to YouTube and you'll be able to see it over there. But I just thought I'd mention that there. It's been a pleasure, Dan, having you on the show. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been an awesome dialogue, and for me as a leader, just talking to someone with your perspective is part of my journey too. I'm really grateful for the opportunity to learn from you.
So for those who are listening and found really great value in listening to our conversation, don't forget to share it far and wide. That is how we continue to move up the ranks of the leadership podcast. And also don't forget to go write that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, because that's how more leaders get the content, get the tips, learn the strategies, and become better. So you get to contribute to that. So thanks again, Dan. It's been awesome. And thank you everybody for listening to the Leadership with Heart podcast. Be well.